Well, welcome along to Morris Lubricants Racing, where we're going to be chatting to our brand ambassadors. We've got Guy Martin, we've got Lydia Walmsley, and we've got David Jenkins, and we're going to be having a little chat about some of the other aspects of motorsport and maybe some of the people that you have been inspired by, or perhaps are your heroes in motorsport, because we've all got them, doesn't it? You know, we all have sports people that we either wanted to be when we were young or still admire to this day. So I'm going to start with Lydia, if I may, on this one. And to start with, it's as well as your sort of own racing experience. So you started in karts, you moved over to saloon cars, racing in the Junior Saloon Car Championship, and now are racing in the Mini Challenge. You know, we've got a bike racer here, we've got a truck racer here. Are there any other formats of racing that you would like to get involved with? I think your father used to race the short oval, so, you know, other areas that maybe just spark that little bit of ignition for you?
Well, something that I've always wanted to do is the 24 hours of Le Mans. I think endurance racing is so interesting, and maybe obviously not next year, but in the future that's something that I'd like to try a little go at. I think that sounds so interesting, and the fact that cars are going around circuits for 24 hours at a time, I think that's brilliant, and the machinery and the manufacturing and everything that goes into it, it's not just the driving, is it? It's trying to get the car to do 24 hours as well. I think that's so interesting, and that's definitely something that I'd like to try later on in my career.
You know, with the racing that you've done so far, it's all been sprint racing. So in other words, you know, the red lights go off on the gantry and you're flat out racing for 15 or 20 or 25 minutes. You know, you 24 hours, mentally your approach as a driver has to be different, because you know, motorsport is a team sport at the end of the day, whether it be what you're doing or Le Mans, but you're also having to make sure that you're mechanically sympathetic with the car for the next driver, the next stint.
Yeah, well, I think that I've always been quite a smooth driver, so I think being smooth would probably help with 24-hour racing and endurance racing, but yeah, definitely a lot more strategy work to go into it. I think there's a lot more brain work to go into it when it's endurance racing, so I think it's just so interesting, and it's definitely something that I'd like to try. 24
hours. You know, flat out. You know, it's hard work on the cars, it's hard work on the drivers. Do you think before maybe you went to Le Mans, we do have a few 24-hour races and some endurance races in this country that are saloon car based. Is that something, maybe dip a toe in the water there and then progress to Le Mans?
Yeah, for sure. I think it would definitely be useful to have a little test beforehand. I think it just takes so much out of you physically as well, isn't it? Because it's not just a 20-minute race. I mean, 20 minutes, trying to keep going for 20 minutes isn't all that difficult, is it? I think anyone can do that. But yeah, 4-hour stints at a time or whatever they do would definitely be a lot harder, I think. So yeah, but I think that's so interesting and definitely something that I'd like to try.
And again, maybe just sort of the final one around you before we move on to Dave or Guy. With what you've raced in the past, it's sort of largely single class, so one make, single class. When it comes to things like Le Mans and the endurance races, traffic management is a huge issue as well, with the faster or the slower cars that you're coming up against.
Yeah, I think that's another thing to think about, isn't it? There's just so much going on, and I reckon when you're 4 hours in, probably racing in the dark as well, it just takes so much effort to mentally prepare yourself, let alone physically as well. I think that's so interesting when you can watch, you know, the drivers doing 4-hour stints. I just think that's phenomenal that the cars, let alone, can do that, let alone a driver themselves. So yeah, really interesting stuff.
I'll come to Guy next, if I may. You know, it's Lydia alluding to 24-hour races there in a car. You know, you've done some of the endurance stuff on bikes, the Bol d'Or and Le Mans and stuff in the past. You know, are there other areas there of racing that you'd like to have a go at? World's your oyster.
Yeah, I know. Like, yeah, like the 24-hour racing, I did Le Mans. Used to love it. But they couldn't, yeah, I couldn't understand them. They couldn't understand me. Oh, bonjour, monsieur. I was about as far as my French went. And there was all gibbering away, and I was just sat in the corner drinking my tea. I was just happy as a frigging shit. I loved it. But you're saying they do 4 hours a piece?
3 or 4, isn't it?
If they're double stinting.
I don't know, what did you do?
No, like a bike, you would ride to a petrol tank.
Oh,
so you ride to the fuel light, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, which would be like 50 minutes at the most. No, the only thing that really wets me whistle, boy, is Top Fuel.
Top Fuel dragsters.
But I mean, obviously, what you'd have to do to get from where I am now, which isn't, I'm not really a drag racer. What I'm trying to do, I'm trying to do it in a mile. So it's sort of a combination between drag racing and land speed racing. So yeah, to be able to get from where I am now to get into a Top Fuel car would be, yeah, no, so it's not going to be possible, is it? I don't know, yeah, how much those things cost. But for what those, it's nearly at the point now. I mean, they reduced it to 1,000 feet. What was that, about 10 years ago? Top Fuel racing.
Yeah.
Like it was always quarter mile, and then there was accidents happening right at the last bit, so they reduced it down to 1,000 feet. This is maybe about 10 years ago. But they're still doing, am I right in saying like I think they're doing like 3.2 seconds, like 330 mile an hour,
Sounds about
340
right.
mile an hour, something like that. And I think they're at a point now like 5.5 G, like lateral G, right? So they're on a point now of a driver blacking out.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, and then the most powerful racing engine ever. They're like 12,000 horsepower, right? You know, and you know, I just love the science behind all of that. You know, he was talking about you know, I'm sure being a top fuel driver, you're only a very small part of the machine. I know you're driving the bloody thing, but just the foreman that runs the team to know. I mean, the art of those things. You know, they run aluminium conrods because they're on the verge of hydraulic locking. That's the optimum when you're running nitromethanol. It's to be, you know, so they're running on sort of controlled detonation all the time, and they're on the verge of hydraulic locking. So the idea is you use the aluminium conrod as a shock absorber, so it doesn't snap the crank. You know, so it's just the science behind getting the top fuel car at the optimum. I love it. I love it. And they're sort of old school. They're an old pushrod engine. They're an old pushrod, but yeah, they're doing 12,000 horsepower.
I think of all the motorsport I've seen, I'd say Top Fuel was the one that I was staggered the first time I ever saw them, because it's just.
When did you see it?
Santa Pop.
You did?
Yeah.
What sort of times? What sort of speed? Big speed?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, they were.
Like proper?
It was, yeah. Right. Yeah, it was a European round.
Right. So
you know, and when they're blipping the throttle just in the paddock and you can feel the shockwave hitting you, it's just, unbelievable. David, you know, you've done a bit. You've done a bit of 125cc karting, haven't you, in the past? You raced an MG midget for a period of time, didn't you?
No, Grand Prix midget.
Did you?
Grand Prix midget.
Yeah, on the quarter-mile ovals, and a bit of karting a long time ago. Many pints of beer ago.
So what else would you like to get into?
I've done a bit of rally navigating in a top flight piece of kit there with one of my oldest friends, and we do all right at that. We've had a couple of top tens on the Manx national event in that, so I enjoy that. I really enjoy that. I'd like to spend some more time in that, but that's just navigating. But it's a whole new different skill.
How do you not get sick? I can't imagine looking at a map book and doing the speeds and the bumps that you're doing.
Well, I struggle getting in the car with anybody normally. I'm one of those kinds of people, really. But no, it doesn't. It didn't bother me. We did a few sort of single venue events, got our eye in, and then off we set for the Isle of Man one day on the lanes. And you know, that's quite an endurance event as well. Starts on a Friday evening, finishes on the Sunday morning. Although we've normally crashed by then, but and it's mentally quite demanding. You can't take your eye off the ball with it, but the sickness and stuff is all right. Yeah, it's not a problem.
I mean, Lydia was talking about, you know, teammates sharing the car with her, but they're just doing driving. I mean, the entirely different motorsport dynamic where the driver has to have total confidence and trust in the information that you're giving him through the notebook, but equally as much, you have to be totally confident that his driving is not going to let you down either.
Yeah, I'd struggle getting in a rally car with somebody that you didn't have a huge amount of respect for, you know. And my driver, Philip Hopkins, he's one of my oldest friends, and he's got amazing car control. He's quite good at crashing. And the way I think about it was, if he's just crashed, I would have definitely crashed anyhow. So, so I'm all right. I take a bit of warmth, a bit of confidence from that, and just keep trying to encourage him normally.
I'll come back to you, Lydia, and maybe pop another question in your direction. You know, you've got a great driver coach with Joe Tanner, who's a hugely experienced driver. I'm sure you admire what he's done, but are there some other drivers out there that you either admire or you would like to try and compete against, those that maybe you haven't quite been on the same grid as yet, but you'd love to just say that you'd raced with them?
Well, you know, all the touring car drivers. I think I aspired to be a touring car driver when I was, you know, I've been watching the touring cars since I can ever remember, to be honest. I always looked on ITV4 to see when it was on, and I'd love to be a touring car driver, and I think if I got on the grid with a touring car driver, I think, yeah, that's amazing. But I always looked up to the likes of Jensen Button. I think he was brilliant at the whole package, really, you know, not just the driving, but off the track as well. He used to handle himself so well, even when, you know, if it's gone well or if it's not gone so well, he used to handle it so amazingly. And I think that's such an inspiration to younger drivers, really, because you can't throw yourself about or whatever. You've got to handle the situations, and I think he was a top driver for doing that. So yeah, I used to look up to the likes of Jensen Button.
As you know well, you know, driving the car is only a small part of the job when you're a professional racing driver. As you say, you know, you've got to deal with the media and everybody else as well. So touring car drivers, and there's been so many good ones. Standout one there for you, whether it be current BTCC or past BTCC or all the other championships like DTM and things that we have?
Yeah, I remember always used to watch the famous Matt Neal and Jason Plato. I think that always used to, you know, great racing that was, wasn't it? That's what everyone tuned in to watch, isn't it? And quite controversial as well, which makes it even more exciting. Obviously, when you talk about the media side of things, they were great for the media, weren't they? Often very controversial. You didn't always agree, but it was great to watch. And yeah, that's my memory of the touring cars anyway.
Those rivalries that exist in every championship, and all three of you will already have names going through your head as to who those rivals are. Same to you, Guy, as well. You know, lots of people admire what you've achieved in sport, but equally as much you will admire and wish you'd competed against other people. I was looking back through, you know, when you were in junior super stocks, there was a certain Cal Crutchlow was racing in that, the same as you. So you know,
Tom Sykes.
Yeah, some big names. Who do you wish you'd raced against?
Who did I really look up to? I wasn't really that sort of, like Mick Doohan, only because he was double hard, right? He just wanted to lead everything, and he had been through loads of injuries, and he just got on with it, and he never screamed about it. He'd have still done the same if there wasn't one spectator in the grandstands. He just did it because that's what he did. Right? So yeah, I respected him for that. But no, I was never really, I want to be this man or that man. I just massively looked up to, probably later years, John Britton, for what he did with the V1000. Yeah, and then sort of before that, I was just always mad, and I got to meet Tony Scott and Chris Mayhew, like the famous engine builders. You wouldn't know these boys, would you? Have you heard of them? Like Tony Scott, he was from Lancashire, and Chris Mayhew just lived up the road from me. Just like legendary engine builders. So that's really why I started racing, because I used to love building stuff in the shed, and then my 50 kept getting a bit. Yeah, it got a bit quick, and I was getting a bit, and I thought, right, the only sensible way for this to last is to go racing. So then I went racing, and then got wrapped up in all the hype with racing, and then yeah, it took a bit for me to realise, oh yeah, the only reason I started racing was because I love building stuff. So yeah, so that's I looked up to engine builders, not racing really, in a way. Yeah. But it's good talking about the.
Well, they can make such a difference, can't they? The engine builders that you were mentioning there.
Yeah, that was the inspiration to me. Just the detail, the attention to detail, and I love that. And I'm still like that now, fannying about building stuff. I'm sort of doing it for myself, trying to do 300 mile an hour. Just what if we change this and change that? Always mucking about with stuff.
Pushing the boundaries.
That's what it's doing. Pushing the boundaries.
Still, you're going
and that's
backwards.
standing still, you're going backwards. Yeah, and it was interesting you talk about the touring cars. That's my current passion at the moment. Is not the moment I've been on with it. I've always been a Volvo man, but I've got an 850 T5, right, GLT, which maybe before the touring cars before your time. But yeah, a state car. But it's not a T5R or an 850. It's just a GLT, so it's a geography teacher spec. But I'm doing it up. I've got the stainless exhaust. I've got a strut brace on it. But it's dead. It's 105,000 miles. I'm only the second owner. She's nice. Manual as well. It's a manual.
I mean, that was a crazy comment at first. I think I first saw it at Donington Park because British Touring Cars were supporting the European Grand Prix, as it was, in 1993. Okay. And out came this Volvo estate car.
Paul Radisich.
Jan Lammers as well.
Jan Lammers.
Go
on.
Yeah, Rydell, was it?
That's right, innit? Am I right in saying Radisich? Was he?
No, he was in the Mondeo, wasn't he?
Was he? You see, I've got that wrong.
Yeah.
Will Hoy. Go on, give us another name. John Cleland.
Yeah.
Jeff Allen, Joe Winkelhock,
Tim
Harvey, Alan Menu. I could carry on.
Anyway, talking about that's my passion for Volvos.
You can tell what my passion is just with the names that were coming out. Dave, you as well, some great rivals on track, but some people that you'd have perhaps loved to have competed with or still admire.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up as a wide-eyed boy on the banks watching from Brands Hatch and Donington, and I was 8, 9, 10 years of age when my dad was racing trucks. And
that's Tony, isn't it? Yeah.
He raced against Barry Sheen and Steve Parrish and all the big names back in the day. And as the sport was developing, there was obviously the Scandinavians. Kurt Goranson, I think, was one of the most impressive back in the day. Slim Borgard was one of the most calculating. And those names, I think, because they were the things that they were the people that you grew up wanting to be like. I think it'd just be great to go and see if you were as good as they were, and if your memory is correct of how you thought things were back then. One of the biggest names in truck racing back in from the super truck era was a Finnish guy, Harry Lusterinen, and he was many times European champion in the super trucks. And I've recently got one of his old trucks and we've restored it and I've driven it myself. And I'd quite liked him to come out and have a squirt round with us and teach me a thing or two, I think, still.
I think some of the stuff that they were doing with the machinery that was available to them at the time, the horsepower, but also the lack of technology in those trucks as well. You know, huge amounts of horsepower, but didn't have the suspension setups that you've got nowadays on your kinds of trucks. So they did some amazing things in what they got.
The super trucks back from the 2000s were, the difference between a super truck and a race truck would be like the difference between a touring car and a Formula One car. You know, that one was very much based on a production model and one was just pushing the boundaries. So the super truck's got 1,500 horsepower. It's got you know, composite panels, independent suspension, all the sorts of things that we don't have now, although our trucks are nearly as fast as they were back then. But the biggest defining thing is the Guy was talking about it before over a brew earlier, the injection technology. Now, we've got nearly 5,000 Newton meters of torque now. We've only got 1,150 horsepower because of the size of the inlet restrictor, but we've just got so much more torque than they had back then. So they used to need automatic gearboxes and stuff like that. Now we're on a manual gearbox because we've got so much torque that the gear changes are limited anyhow. So off on a bit of a tangent there, but no, yeah, I've got some good period old stuff about us, and I think it'd be great to go out and race against some of the guys that were the best of the best in the day.
I think we've all got them. We're all motorsport fans, aren't we, around here? So we've all got those people that we admire. So that's it for the moment from our Morris Lubricants Racing brand ambassadors, but we will be back with them later on to ask them some more questions.